live. So I've learned to kind of leave this and have this so that people can go get whatever they need to get, or at least like join. We always, takes a few seconds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody will be getting the notification. And this does, so Lindsay, I know you said you used StreamYard before. Have you ever used StreamYard, Sharon?
I have. Yeah, I have.
Okay. So it's really great just because it goes automatically to Facebook and YouTube, and I can see all the comments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Can you see the comments on the phone, Lindsay? You don't need to worry about it. Either way, you guys don't need to worry about the comments. I can read them to you. And I put links to your books in the comment section already.
Okay, great.
And I linked to our bookshop page because they are doing free shipping for the next few hours.
Very nice. And also, I would be happy to send some book plates if you'd like too.
Oh, great. Yeah. So if anybody orders anything, let me know and I will reach out and we'll get some book plates.
I can do that for you as well if you would like some.
That'd be great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'd be happy to, depending on how many it is or whatever's easiest, I can even send it to the person. So just let me know. I'm comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you're watching, go ahead and leave us a comment. If you have any questions, we'll get to them, and I will introduce everybody in a few minutes while we're just getting everybody some time to grab your cider or other drink. It doesn't have to be cider. We've just been celebrating Cider Monday all day. So cider, hot cocoa, tea. We had an author earlier who joined us with hot cocoa, and she had it just seemed like it was 90% marshmallows.
That's the best kind.
Well, I actually have one quick question before we really start. So can you guys see each other? I can only see myself, but when you switch off the main screen, will we see each other?
Yeah, you should be able to see all three of us.
Okay. I was just making sure.
I can just see the two books and me.
Okay. Okay. I was just making sure I wasn't, as usual, technologically off.
I know. I'm always so relieved when it works. I'm like, okay, it's all right.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like telling my husband, stay by, please stay close.
I totally understand. Oh, yay, Laura. Laura has been with me pretty much all day. She is so sweet. She just left a comment. She said, good evening. Looking forward to learning about these ladies and their books.
Great.
Laura is super sweet. She is, it's funny because I have known her since the beginning of COVID. She's joined almost all of our lives and always had great commentary and questions to ask. So hopefully she'll come up with some great stuff.
Awesome.
Such a wonderful, encouraging person. So we can go ahead and get started. I will pop everybody on the screen here.
Perfect.
Ta-da! Oh, Lindsay. I'll remove that. But if you have any questions, because I cut you off. But yeah, I don't know if you noticed earlier, I have this feather background I try to pick colors and themes from covers, and I had this feather one, and I was like, oh, I like that background. And I've switched off my green screen because it was just making me too laggy. So for everyone who is joining us, hi, I'm Liz from Caprichos Books. I have been online pretty much all day with these videos. So I'm very excited, though, to wrap this evening up with these wonderful ladies here who have written some great books. And without further ado, I will introduce Sharon Cameron, in my case, just because she's clockwise going now, who is talking about, you can talk about really all of your books, but really the cover we have is The Light in Hidden Places. And then we also have author Lindsay Bandy down here at the bottom there with her beautiful Christmas tree in the background. And who wrote Nemesis and the Swan. And I always make sure to drop I always want to say the Nemesis, and it's not it's just Nemesis and the Swan, which also sounds like a fabulous book. So I will, Lindsay, I'll let you go first. We'll go backwards again. And go ahead and tell us a little bit about your book.
Sure. So my book is a young adult historical fiction set at the height of the French Revolution, but it's definitely an upper young adult crossover into adult. And it's a story of revolutions, both in France and in our main character, Helene's heart. And she definitely changes a whole lot as she goes through the political situations in her country. So when she's really young, even though she's the daughter of a marquis, she has a progressive governess who quickly gets fired, but not so quickly that she doesn't already change Helene. And she also befriends a jeweler's apprentice that she falls in love with. And those things really shape her as she goes through the revolution. So when the revolution hits, her whole world falls apart. Her chateau is burned and she's got to run away. And she ends up with her estranged family on her mother's side. And she's pulled into all these mysteries of what really happened to split her family apart. And the difficult decisions that people make under pressure and under desperate situations.
I learned a new term recently, and it sounds like this is probably maybe a good term, new adult. So it's that crossover between the young adult and the, so I heard that recently and I was like, okay, there is that kind of like in between genre where it's a little bit more mature than young adult, but, you know, adults can enjoy it.
That's one of those funny categories where sometimes if you see new adult, it's very much like,
risque.
Yeah. Mine doesn't go in that, doesn't really go in that direction. So if you're listening and you have that connotation with new adult, it's not.
Yeah,
but it's more like, a good crossover where, you know, something like, well, Sharon's books are good crossovers too. I mean, I love The Light and Hidden Places. I'm a grown up, so, you know, I think but yeah, definitely something that would appeal to both age groups.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe it's almost a term where people, some adults feel that kind of shame reading a young adult, and really that should not be the case at all. Read what you love. It doesn't matter what the category is. So I think that is kind of a Band-Aid term almost, just to make some adults feel better about what they're reading. But
honestly, I feel like it's just really all about marketing. You know, what is all of these terms? It's really just about a good story. What is a good story? And, you know, what is the broad frame of the age of the main character? And that's really all it is, you know, so it doesn't really matter. You know, I love reading middle grade. I love reading adult. I love reading, you know, young adult. But what I really love is story. And I think that's the important part. The rest is just the marketing part and where you put it on a shelf, which does turn out to be important, unfortunately. But
interesting thing, working in a library, you start to realize that some libraries have things on one shelf and others have it on another shelf. And you're like, wait, why? So yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
So we have one comment here. Hello from Memphis. Glad to see you all talking historical fiction. So that's a fun comment. Yes, that's true. I don't cover too much historical.
I know who you are, you lovely person. I just saw your name on there. So hi.
Good. I don't want to butcher it. I'm afraid.
It's Janetta.
Janetta. Okay. I would have probably guessed that, but I wanted to make sure. Sharon, go ahead and tell us pick. I want to say pick one, but Light and Hidden Places is your newest one. So tell us about that one.
Yes, The Light and Hidden Places is it's a different book for me because this book is based on a true story. So this was a very different kind of research and a very different writing process for me this time. But the story is based on the true story of Stefania Podgorska, who during World War II was a 16-year-old Polish Catholic girl who found herself alone and destitute in a German-occupied small city. She was in sole charge of her 6-year-old sister. So it was the two girls sort of against the world. And then one night there's a knock on the door. And on the other side of the door is Max Diamant, who was a young Jewish man who has just jumped off a moving train taking him to a death camp. And he says, please hide me. And Stefania and her sister, Helena, make the choice to hide Max from the Nazis. And eventually they hide his brother and his brother's fiance. And more come until they have 13 Jews in their attic. And then there's another knock on the door. And this time it is Nazi officers who are requisitioning their house for staff quarters for a new hospital, German hospital that's moving in across the street. So basically the Nazis move in. And Stefania is 16 and 17 years old, and she has 13 Jews in an attic and 4 Nazis in a bedroom directly below them. And she rocked it. she just rocked it. She is my hero. She's been my hero for many, many years now. I was aware of her story long before I'd ever considered becoming a writer. I had a whole other career before my writing life, and you know that. But she is who I have always aspired to be. So to get to write a book about her was probably just, I think, one of the greatest privileges that I'll ever have in my life. And I was able to find her son, Ed Brzezinski, and he took me to meet his mom. I met her in the very, very last year of her life. And she had Alzheimer's or dementia at the time. And so she didn't know she met me, but I will absolutely never forget her. And 3 weeks after her death, Ed and I went to Poland together, and we explored her life and saw the attic and met her little sister and, you know, did all the things. So it was really just, this book has been a very, very special project for me, a once in a lifetime kind of project.
That sounds fascinating. I'm really excited to read it. I will say I do mostly audio, so I saw that it's available on Libro FM too, so I'm excited about that.
Yes, and I'll tell you something amazing about the audio as well. The audiobook reader, Beata Pozniak, was friends with Stefania Podgorska for 25 years. She is a Polish actress, and they were very dear friends. And we actually met at Stefania's funeral and sort of bonded over our love for Stefania. And so she was able to read the audiobook, which she does with just such tenderness and love. It was just really a special thing. We have a great conversation at the end that we recorded to just talk about her relationship with Stefania and all of that. So it's a very, like I said, it's a very special project.
Oh, I love that. Laura asked, she said, both books sound amazing. Would you say a 7th grader would like either of them? What a special opportunity to do all of that research for the book. Yeah,
go ahead and answer, Lindsay.
7th grader, I would say it would depend on the maturity of the 7th grader. Usually for mine, I say high school and up, but it really depends on the reader. I had my daughter's teacher has a 13-year-old 8th grader who read it and was great with it. So I would say it depends a little bit on your child and how they can handle more grown-up concepts. But there's nothing real graphic in mine, if that's helpful.
Yep. And I would say the same. I would say mine is appropriate for 7th grade and up. Is where I would put it, on up into adults. I've had a lot of adults, who have enjoyed the book. In fact, I would say, probably 60% of my readers are adults, just based on the, emails that I get and that kind of thing. But I tend to have a pretty broad, range. So same as Lindsay said, there's nothing, graphic or gratuitous, I don't feel like, in the book, but it is dark subject matter for sure.
And it's so interesting. Lindsay answered it the same way that I do. Everybody always asks me for ages, and I'm always like, well, I have a really mature 3rd grader who I let read quite a bit of things, just because if she's not comfortable with it, she's going to put it down. She won't read it if she doesn't like it. She might pick it back up later, but I try not to censor her too much. So that's always it depends. It's always my answer. I'm like, well, so Lindsay, yours, how much, so we know Sharon's is based on a true story, on a true person. How much of yours is based on real people, or talk about a little bit about the research that you had to go through for your book?
Sure, that's a great question. So unlike Sharon's, my main character is not a real person, which I think made it a little harder and a little easier. I didn't have a whole life to work with, but I also didn't have that responsibility of getting it right, being true to a real person. But I really got interested in the French Revolution through its artwork. And I took an art history class in college, and I learned a lot about the ideas and the experiences of the people at the time through the artwork. And it just captured my imagination. I love art and music. So that kind of started me down my trail of research, and that was like 15 years ago. So
Wow.
this book, yeah, but it was kind of like one of those things that I worked on and I didn't, and had babies, all that stuff. But when I really started to work on Nemesis and Swan, I drew on a lot of personal emotions of feeling kind of caught between worlds. I have a lot of close friends and family that are on very different spectrums politically, religiously, and I know how it feels to be kind of caught between and care about people with very different perspectives. And I also don't know one side of my family. So those things connected me to Helene's story, and I could sort of imagine, well, what if you're caught between worlds, you don't know your family, all these things are colliding, and there's a guillotine, and put it all together. So I think because I wasn't basing it on a real historical person, I tried to tap into those emotions that I have and put some of those situations into the past. So I did a lot of first-person narrative reading. I read as much other historical fiction as I could set in the period. I watched, all the History Channel specials and, all the thick history books that I marked up. But I also visited Paris when I was in college, so I had some firsthand knowledge there too.
That's excellent. Very, very interesting. And do you have any other books that you want to talk about?
Well, I don't have any that are out yet, but
it's a general question.
Yeah, but I'm working on two at the moment. One that has a dual timeline with the tattooed boy on the boardwalk of Dreamland Park at Coney Island and modern day New York. And the other one is a post-World War II novel that deals with dissociative identity disorder, which we used to call multiple personalities. So I'm doing some really interesting research that I'm excited to share with you all eventually.
That sounds great.
Some living people this time that I can talk to, which is cool.
Very cool. And Sharon, do you want to tell us either things that you're working on or things that you already have? Any other books that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I can tell you about my books. I also have a French Revolution book. I don't know if you knew that Lindsay, but mine is set. It's set during the Second French Revolution, in the future. So Rook, which is back there behind me, is that one that is very all the guillotines and all the things. It's a retelling of the Scarlet Pimpernel, set in the future. So I had a ton of fun doing all my French Revolution research, so I could totally feel you on that. I have 6 books out, and my first 2 are The Dark Unwinding and A Spark Unseen, which are a duology, and they came out in 2012 and 2013, and then Rook. And then I also wrote The Forgetting, which is sort of a light sci-fi, and it has a companion novel, The Knowing, and that is about a group of people who live in a walled city who forget everything every 12 years, and that came out in 2016 and 2017, and then The Light in Hidden Places this year. And I'll have a new book coming out in 2021. I haven't even put this on my website or anything, so you're hearing it here first. I have a new book coming out in the fall called Bluebird, and it is probably the biggest research project that I've ever done. It is a post World War II, just before and after the war, and it focuses on a very dark CIA project called Project Bluebird, which was a project about mind control, in the very, very beginnings of the Cold War. And there's a lot of Quakers in it too. So Quakers and Nazis and dark CIA plots, and yeah.
That sounds amazing. That's another jumble. I will say, so we, our bookstore does a lot of true crime. We've interviewed a lot of true crime authors, and we have a true crime book club. And I mean, sometimes we read fiction too. But Project Bluebird, that sounds like that sounds familiar.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's good or bad.
It's the very beginnings of MK Ultra, which most people know about. Yeah,
exactly. And it's interesting too, Lindsay, you were talking about dissociative identity disorder, and my daughter and I, that's another thing we've been kind of watching some videos on that and learning also about just different things like Tourette's and just different things that people live with, so I can show her other people who she may not see every day, but so that she can understand that other people don't live the same way we do. So all of this sounds really awesome. But she's probably a little bit too old for an 8-year-old or 9-year-old now. So, but maybe we'll read some of these stories. We'll see. So what I've been doing today too is, I feel like I'm sorry, I'm going to read Laura's comment. I feel like I might be living your forgetting book. Senior moment.
I felt that many times.
That's a great comment. But what I've been talking to authors, kind of tangents, not necessarily about books, but just the holidays. So I'm curious about, what are your traditions for the holidays? Do you have any traditions? Either just in general, like when do you open your gifts? Because that's been a hot topic today. I didn't realize it's been so diverse in how people do it. So do you want to tell us about either of those? Either one of you, whoever wants to go first.
I can definitely I can jump in there. So I live in sort of an interesting situation, because I live on the street that I grew up on as a child, and it's all my family, all of us. It's aunts, uncles, grandparents, brothers, sisters, parents, like just everyone from both sides all lives on the same street. It's a little bit like a compound. So it's really easy though to do the holidays, because we just walk up the street with a casserole. In fact, some of us have little wagons to pull our, stuff. There's no point driving a car. So yeah, but we do end up having lots of different gatherings because of the different sides of the family, so we have to do the one side here and then the one side over there, and then your personal Christmas gets stuck in between, and then you have to get the in-laws, fit in there. So there's like 4 or 5 Christmases basically that usually happens, though this year we're all just flummoxed. Like we don't know what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and it's a big topic of conversation. So
yeah, and that was another question I had kind of asked too, was and how does that tradition look different?
Yeah,
You don't know yet. I don't know. I haven't really thought far enough ahead for Christmas, but
we barely made it through Thanksgiving.
My
90-year-old grandmother always does all the cooking. She's going strong, and she cooks for everybody. And this is probably, since I think she was probably producing turkeys from the womb, this is probably, I think it's the first time she has not done a Thanksgiving turkey, and she was devastated by it. It was terrible. It was so hard,
Lindsay, what tradition do you want to share?
Well, so I have 2 daughters. They're 9 and 11. And so ever since they were babies, we said Christmas morning's always going to be theirs at home. So we do that. But then we have my side and my husband's side. We're kind of all within 45 minutes. So we usually end up just kind of taking turns. We end up with 3 or 4 Christmases in there too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my girls' favorite tradition that we've started, we have an elf on the shelf, Rosie. And they've always known it's a gag. They always know that it's mom doing it. So I do ridiculous things. Like I pull out their baby potty and I fill it with chocolate chips and I sit the elf on it. And the elf leaves them notes every morning. So they know it's mom. But then I can be ridiculous and have fun with that, and they take pictures. And last year, since they're getting older, they started taking turns too. But we have a lot of fun.
That's what I was thinking about doing very soon, if not this year, maybe next year, putting her in charge of it, because I just can't keep up with it. I love seeing what other people do, but I just cannot keep up with it. I cannot remember. We have an elf, but it pretty much hangs out in the same spot. It shows up and then it leaves, and that's about it.
I forget sometimes.
But I'm so jealous that you're near all your family. We would always, as a kid, we got one gift on Christmas Eve. And that was kind of our incentive for making it through Catholic Mass on Christmas Eve. And then on Christmas Day, we would rush and open all our gifts. And then we would drive for 2 or 3 hours to our family. We have family in pretty much everywhere. But mostly upstate New Jersey. But so it's funny, Sharon, talking about that. My mom is from Jersey City, and she lived in that kind of block. Like, she always has stories of that block was her family. Like, and you had everybody, and it was like a commune. And like, grandma lived upstairs, your uncle lived next door, and that grandmother lived upstairs from them, and all of that. So it was kind of like that, where so we were the family who doesn't live close, so we would always drive to see all of them.
Did they switch houses? Did they switch houses, Liz? Because that's what we do.
So the way it kind of worked for us is each kind of grandparent level had a different holiday. So my grandparents were originally kind of in charge of Easter, and then it passed on to my aunt.
Oh,
so
I
that
meant like living in each other's houses. We actually switch houses. The house I live in, I've had 3 other relatives live in the house.
No, I've never had that. That's awesome.
Sometimes they use the same moving van, and like just run it up and down the street.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh, that's so awesome. Now my family is all scattered all over.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that I'll say is talking about food. It's so actually my family is Polish. My great grandparents came over through Ellis Island before World War II, so early on. Early 1900s, and they came through Ellis Island from Germany and Poland. So even the German side kind of got like overshadowed by the Polish side. So almost all the food is still Polish at every holiday. So we have kishka, which is basically, it sounds gross, but blood sausage. And it's one of my favorite things. And sadly embarrassed to admit, but that's something that I get at the holidays. So that's one of my things that I know it's the holiday when that's around. Wow. So I'm excited to try to find that this year. I had some at Thanksgiving, so that was good. But I have not yet come up with my own kind of dish or something that I'm usually responsible for. So I always ask other people, what are you responsible for bringing to the table? And what is something that is your holiday? Like, it's the holiday when you have grandma's whatever, or, Aunt Susan's whatever. So is there any of those dishes that you want to talk about? Lindsay, I'll let you go first.
Yeah.
So my dish is usually the cream puff cake, and this is like my husband's favorite. It's usually his birthday cake too, but it has this pastry crust. It's all like puffy and fluffy, and then it has a layer of vanilla pudding, and then it has a layer of Cool Whip and chocolate drizzled on top. So it's kind of like Boston cream cake. But it's a little different, and you refrigerate it, and it's really good. So that's usually if I'm bringing something, that's what I'll bring. But I love candied sweet potatoes, and my mom makes them the best. So that's what I look forward to. That and the stovetop stuffing. I like the cheap stuff.
That's awesome. Sharon, what do you have?
I tend to I make something different every year. I was actually going to say the year after my research trip to Poland, we made pierogies for Christmas. Homemade. Like, I made the stuff. I did the whole 9 yards. I may never do it again, but I did do it that once. But I usually one mainstay, I tend to make almost all of it for what happens at my house, and then I take pieces of what I made, to everybody else's house. But the sticky toffee pudding is a thing that is usually my thing, and that's a very British dessert, but it's like a sort of a really fruity, cinnamony date-based cake that is soaked in a caramel rum sauce, and it is so good.
That sounds delicious. I might have to get Lindsay's cream puff recipe, because my mom, that's another thing at Halloween. This is not Christmas related, but at Halloween, my mom makes just regular cream puffs, and she always makes them in little pumpkins. So she makes the dough orange, and then adds the cream, and then draws on with like chocolate that will harden. So like melted chocolate hardens. She draws a jack-o'-lantern face, and that's always one of my favorite things my mom makes too. So cream puffs.
Less work, a little less intense.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like something I can do.
Yeah, you just slice it and say here.
Exactly. Janetta says, now you've got to post those recipes. Yes. And it's funny. So Laura mentioned, and I'm going to butcher this word as well. My husband makes Czech sauerkraut dish made with lots of butter and little bread balls in it. It's only made at Christmas time. Ooh. That sounds really good. I am also, so this is a funny thing that I learned is kind of a Maryland. I didn't realize it was a Maryland thing, but Maryland apparently has sauerkraut at Christmas, and that's not a common thing for other people. But I have sauerkraut at every holiday because we're Polish. So I didn't realize it was apparently a Marylandish thing.
Now, it's a Pennsylvania Dutch New Year's Day thing. That's a very Pennsylvania Dutch thing.
I could see that too.
Had it on Christmas.
Yeah, and the with the pierogies, my daughter just started eating pierogi. Like she likes noodles in general, but she's just started like getting into pierogies, and she has them a lot at her father's house. So I was like, we have to make them. I'm gonna have to learn and teach you how to make pierogies. Not that that's something that we've ever done, but I think that might be our new tradition. So yes, I totally understand the homemade pierogies. There was a place in Annapolis that used to like that. They were a store that just made pierogies. And I think they've closed, but I'm not sure. I'd have to double check it. But I thought it was very interesting. I was like, wow. And they had all the stuff that you can put in there. I mean, it's a little Polish hot pocket, basically. You just stick whatever you want in there. Ham, onions. I love onions.
A Polish boiled hot pocket.
Yes.
Oh my God. Right?
Well, and that's another thing. I will say I like mine, though you boil them and then you fry them because I like the crispy.
Oh, I do like that too.
So I love any kind of.
Are you technically supposed to deep fry them? Is that the right way or not?
You can do either. I think they're usually either boiled or sort of stir fried, but it's not like deep fried.
Yeah, I don't know. Deep fried always makes me think of like really heavy batter and like really just thick. And this is more like a stir fry, like you said, just lightly crispy.
It's a soft dough. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I've made them from frozen at home where I'll boil them and then I'll put them on my griddle and butter. But
yes,
I think the traditional way.
I don't know really the good traditional. I don't know if they're. I'm probably just boiled. I'm sure they didn't really fry them. That's probably the American version of things coming in. We need butter.
The usual American version of things,
right?
At least in the South.
Yes. So they, my other question, this is just a general question that I ask every author. What are you reading right now?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
I'll give you a minute to think, and I will say I just finished reading Plain Bad Heroines, which was a very interesting book, and it definitely it's I don't know how to describe it at all. I don't even know what category it's under. But it is definitely a horror story, but it's not, it's scary, but it's not, I don't know. It's not like traditional horror stories. So, it was a very, very good book. And then I also finished reading A Town Divided, which is a Christmas story by, Orson Scott Card. And I did not like that one at all.
Oh, wow.
I don't recommend it. It's a short story, but and I'll say it's also, it makes me think of like Lindsay said, and I'm curious now, and I want to read maybe other books of his, or at least I'm wondering if it's a male thing, but I felt like there was no it felt like it wanted to be a Hallmark movie, but there was no feeling in it. So you talking about putting all this feeling into this book, and I'm like, I'm wondering if that's a female author thing, because he had no feeling in that book. I'm like, this is Hallmark without any of the, like, people are kissing, but there's no romance. It just didn't feel anything. It was didn't get me in the
no feels. That is a pretty, that's pretty bad.
All right. So what are you reading now?
Well, I have been reading The Light and Hidden Places, but I'm also reading.
What a good answer!
I'm also reading Scythe by Neil Shusterman, and I know I'm late to that party, but I've been reading that too. I
want to read it. I don't know anything about it, honestly. and I have something for you. I'll have to get your address later. I'll have something I'm going to send you. But I have not read it yet. But that is a party I think I want to get on, a train I want to get on. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it's good because it's got that dystopian feel, but it's not like, so I don't read a lot of high fantasy, but I like it if it, if it has that supernatural element or that, out there thing, but it still feels very much like I can picture this world. There aren't any centaurs or anything like that. So, yeah, I think it's really good.
All right. And Sharon, what are you reading?
You're going to totally laugh at me. I can actually reach what I'm reading right now. Okay, so there are two things, and I'll just explain something. When I am writing and I have been on a major deadline and sort of had to stop life and, do that thing where you finish a book, I cannot read other people's writing during that time. There's just something, I have to be so immersed in my world and in what I'm doing. And when I read somebody else's and I love it, I get so immersed like I got into Lindsay's. I got very immersed in your book. And so when I'm writing, I have a hard time unimmersing, and getting back into mine. So I kind of have to wait. So I've just actually started kind of picking back up reading again. But what I've been reading Quakers and Nazis. That was a reference book that I was actually finishing to kind of, make sure I had all my stuff straight for the new book. And then this is actually hilarious. And I'm enjoying the heck out of this book. This is called Silver Wings for Vicki. This is it's like Nancy Drew for adults in 1947, except they're mystery solving air stewardesses. It is so funny. I can't tell you how much I am enjoying the ridiculousness of this. And, Vicki can do anything. She can make you a sandwich. She can light your cigarette on the plane. If somebody just happens to shoot their rifle and shoot a hole through the wall of the plane, she can fix that too. She will learn the logging business just to make her patrons, her people, on the plane, to make them feel more comfortable. She will go learn your entire business and your entire life so she can have a great conversation with you on the plane. Silver Wings for Vicki.
I love it.
These. And my son gave them to me for Christmas last year because he thought I would think it would be really funny, and he was so right. I do think they're really funny. It's actually really interesting, though. It's actually a really interesting sociological study, because these are like mass market light romances only in the 40s. And it's like, what is considered to be glamorous and what is considered to be the female role, and what you can aspire to and what you should be aspiring to. Those opinions are all wrapped up in there, and it's actually super interesting read. And I think it really helps me understand mindset of different, reading those kind of mass market things from different time periods really helps you understand the mindset of the people at that time. Even though this is an idealized version, what that ideal is really fascinating. So it is interesting and hilarious.
You made me think of like Barbie, who had to be the jack of all trades essentially, yeah. And like MacGyver,
Oh yeah. Oh, she is like Barbie, MacGyver, Nancy Drew, all rolled.
Yeah, right.
On a plane.
On a plane.
I found that really helpful though too, Sharon. Like, when I'm researching to read fiction or to watch, French Revolution, I couldn't watch movies or anything like that, but to get that feel for not putting our ideas of gender or our ideas and pasting them on top,
Yeah, to really get into that mindset of what was important. And it's always so interesting to understand, not only what is different, but what is so the same. I was thinking that when you were talking earlier and, about putting those little pieces of yourself. And that's because the human story is universal. The human story is timeless. We're in different circumstances, and our experience of, our level of knowledge or experiences, can differ, but the same things have been going on with human beings since the beginning of time. We're just human beings, and that story is human and universal, and it's fascinating to understand where those differences and samenesses, that's not a real word, but I just made it one, all those same, you know, those similar things. It's really fascinating to find where the line is.
It's something that, and you just made me think of too, is it's really interesting to hear you say, you know, you can't read anything while you're writing and vice versa almost. Somebody commented earlier and they thought I was crazy. I am the person, I don't write, but I will say I read a lot of things at the same time. Like I have like 5 or 6 books that I can tell you that I'm actually reading. So when I say, oh, I'm reading this, I do mean I'm reading like 5 different things. I only told you 2 that I just finished. But because I like to read, I need several genres, so I can hop book to book and be in different worlds. I'm the opposite almost, Sharon. I need multiple things to stimulate me at different times because it's just whatever strikes me at that moment of what I'm feeling, whether it be a romance. And I think that's probably because it's one reason that I own a bookstore, so that I can have genres and have my choice of whatever I want at that moment. So, but yeah, I am definitely looking forward to reading both of your books. And that was really my last question. That's kind of my wrap-up question. But is there anything either one of you want to add, or any other comments that you have? Oh, I have one other question, actually random, for Sharon. Lindsay, we talked about where you're from, but Sharon, you remind me so much of another author that I know. So her name is Michelle Nelson Schmidt.
I don't know her.
No, okay. So I don't mean anything talking about, she writes children's books. So not talking about, but just mannerisms. You should go watch some of her videos because I feel like you have, and I'm like, wow,
she's my cousin. Like maybe we've got that DNA thing going on.
Yes. I just so many of the mannerisms. I'm like, wow, like there's just so much of it that makes me think of Michelle. So Michelle writes books for children. Like she has a set of she is writing a book a month for 18 months, and she is on 12 months. She's written one every month in 2020, and they're books that are written in like a dyslexic friendly font, and they are like early readers, and like there's so many layers to them, but they all deal with different children, a huge diverse group of friends throughout her book. So 18 is, I'm not surprised that she can do it, but so but yes, I just look up some of her videos because I feel like your mannerisms, you'll
I'll check it out, see if she's my dog.
I thought you were going to say like, yeah, she lives 3 doors down.
Right? I wanted to be like, oh yeah, that's my cousin. That's what I expected. I really expected that. And I know she lives in Florida right now, but I'm not sure where she's from originally. So I didn't know if I'm wondering if it's a regional thing, like wherever she's from originally, if it's just that.
It's really Southern.
Maybe, I don't know, but it cracked me up. So yes, thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. And again, is there anything else you want to add before I let you go and enjoy your evening?
Just thank you for having us. It was really fun. It was a fun chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. And happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays. And Lindsay, I do have one other question for you. I had mentioned this, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. Is your audiobook going to be available anywhere other than Audible?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I'll have to look into that. It's definitely on Audible.
Yes.
And I guess, Blackstone does, should be on Downpour as well.
I am not familiar with them. I'll have to look into them. So independent bookstores like myself, we use Libro FM to promote audiobooks, and I just know that it's not on there. So I'm going to try to fight to get it on there because that's where I get them.
Blackstone too.
Yeah, I'll push back on the email. I had emailed and I said, hey, is it going to be available? So, and that's, I do a lot of driving and commuting, so it's just so much easier for me. And I know some people consider it cheating, but I think an audiobook is just as valid as an actual book. And
I love audio. Love it. It's the way I get a lot of my reading done.
Right? I mean, you're cooking. I mean, as we all know, you're doing stuff around the house. It's so I'm a multitasker. I usually like to be doing multiple things. Like I've been playing with something the whole time we're talking because I need to have my hands busy. But Laura said, I have totally enjoyed all the different interviews today. Thank you, Liz, for doing this. Yay. New books to add to my to read list. So yes, thank you. both so much for joining me. I'm looking forward to interviewing again when your next book comes out, or again in the spring. We can talk about, or when the paperbacks come out too. So, all right, have a wonderful evening. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.